Now I have all of that to live up to. Alan, thank you. Good to see you again. Great pleasure to be here to present this. This is a topic, no question, that is very much in demand, and it has been for quite some time. Building and growing and maintaining a high net worth practice. Great to have a chance to share some thoughts and ideas with you on this. The old saying, "What was once vices are now habits." And again, a number of years ago, there was, a select number of advisors who were into that high net worth market. Maybe they worked, with professional athletes, or they work with a select number of clients, but and they were the very elite. Today, because of all the changes in the industry and really out of necessitation, building a high net worth practice has really become very, very necessary with the changes in AI, with the advent of robo advisors, again, the shift in compensation, all the additional work that has to go into servicing clients of this level and all the rest of it. But this has become the mainstay, very, very much so. Again, what used to be just those people who were the cream of the crop with the advisors that I'm working with today, this has and really must become the focus on that. So what I wanted to do here in the beginning is to just basically go through a set of questions, and I would ask you to take a couple of moments, get a pen and a piece of paper, and write down and score yourself out of 10 on your answer to these questions, because I think it's a great starting point for everyone individually to say, if this is of interest, if I am, partially in this market of high net worth clients, if I'd like to be more in that market, or I'm not yet, right? To be able to score ourselves and to see exactly how we're doing and being able to, kind of lay the groundwork and going forward. So the questions going forward. So I'll start with this one. I think there's about 10 questions. So score yourself out of 10. How do you think you're doing? Rate yourself on, the size of the asset value of your current clients, right? How would you rate yourself on that? Is the average size of your clients, is it a 10? Are you, really hitting it out of the park with the size of clients, or is it middle of the road, or is it something that really needs a lot of work? Question number two. It's not everything, but it certainly is one thing. Your current income level. And again, one of the realities of building a high net worth practice is that fewer clients, more service goes into them, right? And a larger compensation model. And again, based on the compensation that used to be, 2.5% and more, now being down at 1% or even less, the clients have to be larger. So, going the old route of having clients of 200,000 and 300,000 and 500,000, over time, people end up with too many clients. So at this point in time, how would you rate your current income level? The next point of this is so important, because I've never worked as an advisor one day in my life, but I know what you do. I've been studying advisors and working for them and with them for the past 22 years. And so managing your time is so essential. And I know what goes on into, your day. Every morning you get up, you sit down at your desk. What do you have to do? You have to do everything, right? And so that becomes incredibly overwhelming. So rate yourself on how you are at managing your time, or do you feel pulled in a million different directions? And that becomes very, very challenging. The next question, do you have an effective message to attract new clients to you? What, for years and years and millennia has been called the typical, elevator speech. But the reality of the elevator speech, and this is something I've done a tremendous amount of work on and in and with clients on, to really change the dynamic about that and not make the elevator speech about me. It has to be turned around and made about the client. So how would you rate yourself on yours? Is your current model, is it driving a sufficient number or an exceptional number of high net worth referrals? And again, the key here is high net worth referrals. And we have to be, strong enough psychologically and mentally, and with a business proposition to say, thank you for the referral to your brother or whoever it is, but we don't take on clients. I'm sorry, we have to spend an extraordinary amount of time with the clients that we do take on. And someone who has, $200,000 or $300,000, that's not a client that we're looking for. So again, your model, is it driving a substantial number of of referrals, of high net worth referrals? The next question is so critically important, and it really should go first. This is it. It's everything. How would you rate your level of confidence on a level of 1 to 10? How do you rate your level of confidence in business? But not only that, but in life as well, in work-life balance with your family, with your health, with your friends. So many times, people will go, chasing only money and get to the end of life and say, cost me too much, right? It cost me too much. So, what is your level of confidence in your day-to-day operation with your company and with your private life as well? Rate yourself on your, level of the model of COIs that you're working with, your centers of influence, because the most recent studies are coming out. Well over 75% of clients who are giving referrals, of high net worth client referrals, are not coming from family or friends or coworkers. They're coming from centers of influence. So really building and designing a very robust centers of influence model is absolutely key. So how do you rate yourself on that? The high net worth client model, we'll have you total that up at the end. But really, if we're anything, I think, below a 7.5 to an 8 on the answer to any of those questions, I truly believe that that's where your future lies. High net worth clients. And this was a phrase that I borrowed from one of the top marketers in the world. And he was talking about, building a high net worth practice in a different paradigm than financial services and insurance. But he said this: don't change the what, right? Change the who. Because when you change the who, that becomes absolutely everything. And so many people, I think that the very, very wealthy people, that there's this incredible scarcity of extremely wealthy people and clients, potential clients out there. And I have been telling this story for a very long time. This is an old photograph. I think the place has been renovated and redone since then. But this is the Barclay Hotel and Spa, and this picture was taken just after its opening, probably about a year after its opening, and it opened about halfway through 2009. And if you know history well, and being in financial services, the crash of 2008 decimated the economy, decimated, jobs and income, and so much for so many people. And this gentleman in Dayton, Ohio, one of the most ravaged areas in the United States, one that got hit the hardest by poverty, had an idea that he was going to open this luxury hotel and spa the year of the crash. And he went ahead and he put over $2 million into building this luxury hotel and spa. But it wasn't just any hotel and spa. The Barclay Hotel, you should note something in that name. It's a hotel for dogs. It is a hotel for dogs in the most economically challenged time of most of our lives, in the most economically challenged city in North America. And so he opened this hotel. And this is a high-end hotel for your dogs. You can have a Ruth's Chris steak brought in for your dog and cut up at night. You can order a la carte. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, I want to go back and be a dog. You can have your dog have its favorite story read to it, and have it tucked in, and have it, to align play dates with other dogs that they're compatible within the hotel. There's a chandelier in their room. They have beds. It is so, long story short, it's not cheap to stay at the Barclay Hotel. You can't do it, but your dog can. But your dog only can if you really planned ahead. Because after they opened, the wait list for the Barclay Hotel was months long. They were slammed. So when you get looking at this, I love this story, because if you ever wonder, are there, sufficient number of rich people out there to go after high net worth clients? The answer is you bet. Because just in this little, town of Dayton, Ohio, this luxury hotel and spa for dogs is doing just a barking business. So take that out of your head. Yeah, I know Alan's, she's just eyes are rolling right now. You're just punishing herself, he said. But there is no question that they certainly do exist. So high net worth clients. Let's look at it. And these facts and figures were a few years ago, but they're probably a little bit higher now. So wealthy individuals in Canada, $1 to $5 million would be nice to have in your portfolio. 764,033 of them. High net worth clients up to 30 million. Then we have 91,000. Yeah. And 10,395 Canadians in excess of $30 million. So if you were questioning whether or not, really going all in on the high net worth market, again, that statement is absolutely so true. Don't change the what, change the who. And the reality is there's a lot of who's out there that we can, go after and make that the focus of your practice. Become that advisor that says what? I am a high net worth advisor. All these clients, all the numbers you see on the screen in front of you, all of those people are very, very deserving of your work and business. And they need you, right? Are they any better as a human being or a Canadian than people that might have $200,000? No, of course not. But you can't really make a living, with the changes in compensation and with everything else on those clients. So more and more of those are going to go the robo way, and more of these clients are so going to need you if you're really good at checking all the boxes of being an advisor for high net worth clients. So in doing this and in changing behaviors, this is so critically important in the process of being able to get our minds right and get our behavior right in order to hit the target. So the common concept of this would be, well, I need to, figure out the process. So if I want to go after high net worth clients, then I'm going to have to find 10 of them a day to call, and I'm going to call them. So that's the process. I'm just oversimplifying everything. Of course, that's not the process, but let's say it is. So that is the process. I'm going to find 10 of those clients, and I'm going to call them. And so that's, 50 high net worth clients I'm going to call every week. And the outcome that I'm hoping for is I get one high net worth client per month. Okay. So that's how people normally, approach this, under the guise of saying, once I do that, then I will have this identity as being an advisor for high net worth clients. And people try this again and again and again, and they fail over and over and over. And here's why. Identity doesn't come after the outcome. Identity has to come before the process. If you are not properly, aligned psychologically and behaviorally as the advisor to high net worth clients, then the process and the outcome won't happen because you're not aligned psychologically to be that person. Does that make sense? I know it may sound a little bit askew, but we'll get in and delve in this in far greater detail in talking about the science of human behavior and really proving this point out. So again, we need to identify, what is my identity? What is my identity? My identity today is arguably one of the top consultants, coaches, speakers, and trainers in the country today for financial services and insurance professionals. And I can say that after, well over the 10,000 hours have been put in, right? Providing results to thousands and thousands of people. But in order to begin to believe that I could be that person, the first time that I went up and spoke at a region meeting before I had a client as a financial advisor, I had to believe myself that I belonged there. And so from the behavioral direction, it starts at identity, then it goes to process, and then it drives outcomes. And I think that this one slide answers a lot of questions for a lot of people. So behavior drives absolutely everything. The behaviors that we have drive choice or lack thereof in being able to instill the behaviors first and foremost that allow us to identify that way, that you are the advisor that services high net worth clients, and you are very deserving of it because you know you have the expertise, you know you have the business model, you know you have the drive, and you know that you have the desire to help them to do that and create fantastic relationships. But it starts with the creation of behavior. And behavior really is a choice. Not one of us was ever born with a behavior, right? We were born pretty much as a blank slate. And so it's so important to know that any behaviors that we have that are not serving us, we can absolutely change them. So in the start of this process, and I have talked about this so many times over my life over the past 22 years professionally, and then personally for years and years before that, is that it has to start here. It has to start with belief. And every one of us was born with an absolutely perfect belief system. We didn't doubt anything when we were growing up and we were children. But, as we grow up, we have all of the information that we take in from experience in life. We store it in the files of the subconscious mind. And occasionally, right, we're going to face obstacles. Have you faced an obstacle in your life? If you have, then we have a name for you. We call you human, right? So this information is stored then in the subconscious mind for storing the information, for training and knowledge and skill development to make your kids breakfast and drive your car and learn your job and be able to, fix the TV and get it back on Netflix, right? All of those things. The storage of that information is terrific, and we access it, and it provides us with the ability to do things. But for the accessing of negative information, which is exactly the same process, and we'll get into that, not so much. And what it ends up creating, honestly, is the greatest challenge that you or I or anyone on this earth will ever face. And it's this. It's that voice. You hear it, I hear it every day, all day, right? And, that voice is there, which is basically, playing the tape, the recall of information from past experiences. But what the voice tells us is very, very different. The voice may tell one person, get into the office and pick up that phone and start calling new people because that's exciting every time you do it. And every time you come home, you can share your success with your family. That's one voice. Another voice to another advisor might say, but this doesn't work out for you. You've tried this before and it didn't work out before. And you had that really rude person on the phone and all that information is stored there. So think for a moment, what is it that voice is telling you? What is it telling you? That you can't do what? That you're not good at this, or you can't do that, or you can't go here, or you can't create that. And the reality is it's not true, but it really, really feels like it's true, doesn't it? It gets in our head and it really makes us believe that, those thoughts that we're having and the information that we're recalling is absolutely true, and it's not. And it ends up creating this, right? The screenplay of the motion picture of our lives. By the time we get into our adult years, this information has become so ingrained and it feels like, oh no, this is all true, right? Don't believe everything you think. Actually believe very little of what you think. But it creates the screenplay of our lives, and we wake up in the morning, and when our feet hit the floor beside the bed, most of our day is already programmed and processed, right? You are this person, you're going to brush your teeth, you're going to have this kind of a day, you're going to drive to work this way, you're going to work with these people, these are your limitations, and this is the box you're going to stay in. And science has proven that the average adult has some 60,000 thoughts a day. Did you know that the average adult has about 90% of the same thoughts you had yesterday? So we end up living our lives in this box, and it's not true. This story that I was told by this screenplay, based on the fact that I grew up in poverty and parent alcoholism and lived on the streets alone at 14. Fascinating. I won't let my kids go to the end of the driveway. But at 14 years old, I was on the streets and I was homeless. And you start to buy into it and you start to believe that this is going to happen. And sometimes the right people and the right words will come along and For me, it was my guidance counselor, Mr. Gretzinger. I had to go down and sign out of school when I decided to leave at age 16 because I had to eat. And they sat me in his office and he tried for an hour to talk me out of going. And he wasn't able to. And I was walking out the door and he stopped me. He said, Randy, I want you to know something. I said, what's that, sir? He was a wonderful man. He said, I want you to know this, that where you are now has nothing to do with where you can go. And, I'll be honest, there was no angels singing and the skies didn't part and, anything like that. But I thanked him and I shook his hand and I walked out the door and I went and got a job in manual labor. And for whatever reason, his words stuck. And I started wondering, right, what if he's right? Folks, he's right. I can promise you, I can guarantee you. And he caused me to start challenging the lies that people told me and the lies that I told myself. And that's what I want you to do, is to know that where you are now has nothing to do with where you can go. And so I went from manual labor jobs into eventually owning a couple of small businesses, swimming pool company and a catering company. If you come to my house, I'm a good cook. I'll make you dinner. And then went off into sales, working for a couple of Fortune 500 companies. And then at 28 years old, on a dare, something I always wanted to do, called a radio station up in Barrie, and left my job in sales and started a job in broadcasting at $4.25 an hour part-time. And it's always easy to tell the Coles Notes version. Was able to make it to the #1 radio station in Canada, to CFRB 1010 in Toronto, and then off to spend a year at Global Television hosting my own show. And then 22 years ago, leaving to form TaylorMade Leadership to do this. And this is honestly what I think I was always destined to do. Right? I have this incredible capacity to look in the eyes of anyone I meet and see absolute identical potential in everyone. And I absolutely believe it's true. I know it is. But make this statement your own. Where you are now has nothing to do with where you can go. And so behavior, right? And that mindset that comes along with the behaviors that we create in our lives over time. Yeah, it is so critically important to be able to, understand the flaws and the things that hold us back. So behaviors are created from the intake of information into the subconscious mind, stored in the files of the brain called a neural net. We'll talk about that in a second. But the two elements of behavior, there really is a dual biological and a psychological process at work in this. There's no question. The knowledge is that they can cause drive and perseverance and success, right? Those are behaviors. I watched a video with Tiger Woods years ago and, watched him when he was on top of the world. And on one of his practice days, he would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go and lift weights and work out and have a very light breakfast and go out in the golf course and swing golf balls all by himself with his coach in the blazing heat in Arizona, and come in for dinner time and then watch film till 9 o'clock at night and then work out again and then have a shower and go to bed, right? Why did he do it? Because he had this insatiable behavior created that says, this is how I win. Right? So it looked like it was easy. It always looks easy. But, his story and being able to see that, you realize that he had created a behavior where he couldn't not do it. And everyone can get to that point where it doesn't become work anymore, which is, part of the good news. Behavior can also create inaction, right? Or fear or stress or procrastination or failure. The same exact process, which is the recall of information based on a past experience that is no longer here. And so every one of us, the behavior that we have now, it doesn't have to stick. It doesn't have to be that way. This is a great analogy that I've been sharing for many years from the stage at conferences, and I just did it at a conference up at Horseshoe Valley, north of Toronto last week, and talking about, here's the absolute proof that the information stored in the files in the subconscious mind that may be the detractor for anything that's happening in your life can be changed. So the story goes, and I would interact with you as the audience and say, so apples, what shape are they? Say, well, apples are round. And what color are they? Well, they're red. Okay. But what if I told you today that apples round and red cease to exist? They don't exist anywhere. Apples are now square and blue. Okay, apples are what? Square and blue. Chances are you're not going to, go home on the way home and go in the grocery store and look for square blue apples. But here's what would happen. If everywhere you went for the next 2 or 3 months, apples round and red ceased to exist. They did not exist anywhere. Apples are now square and blue. They're on television, they're in trees, they're in your refrigerator, they're in the grocery store, they're in magazines, they're in your lunch, they're everywhere. By about 2 or 3 months, which is how long it takes to change a behavior, by the way. It's not 21 days. It would take me hours to go into the scientific information of why that's an absolute lie, but it's not 21 days. It's 2 to 3 months of repeating the thought or action or, activity daily to create a new behavior. Because then it goes from making myself do it to understanding that it's just something I do, and then it's not work. So within 2 or 3 months, if someone called you on the way home and said, can you pick up bread and milk and apples on the way home? You would go to the grocery store and get the bread and milk. You'd be scanning around going, where are those square blue things, right? Because it's in your brain, the square blue things. And you'd put some in a bag and you pay for them and go home, and you will have altered one of the strongest neural nets in your brain. Imagine how many times apples round and red have been put into the subconscious mind over and over again, right? Okay, right? But now it has changed. So anyway, so I talk about this analogy, and at this conference, several years ago, there's a couple thousand people in the room, and at the end of the conference, a number of people were up talking to me, and there was one guy kind of standing off in the wings, and he wasn't in the lineup, and he was waiting for everybody to finish, and you could just kind of see that he was not in the best mood possible, right? So Mr. Cranky. So he walks over to me kind of briskly, and he says, yeah, listen, I need to talk to you. And I said, sure, what's on your mind? What can I help you with? He said, well, I'm a doctor and I study neuroscience, and that nonsense you're telling people about square blue apples, it's not true, and you should stop doing it. You're embarrassing yourself. And I went, wow, what a happy individual, right? So sometimes you think of the right things. This is where this came from. And sometimes you think of the right ideas on the moment. And I said to him, I said, Doc, do you have a dollar? And he looked at me kind of indignantly. What do you want a dollar for? What you're telling people is it's embarrassing. Stop it. I said, it's pertinent. I just want to show you something. Do you have a dollar, sir? So he reaches in his pocket, and I'm standing there with my, a table of books that I'm signing in. And he takes, a loonie out and throws it on the table in front of me. He goes, there's your dollar. What? And I looked down and I looked back at him. I said, no, I asked you for a dollar, sir. What's that? He said, it's a dollar. What's your point? I said, sir, you're much older than I am. Uh, Dollars are paper. What's that? He just, oh, if you could have been there, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. He just stood there and he glared at me for like 20 seconds and didn't say a word and turned and walked out of the conference hall. Right? It's absolute, folks. The round red apple will become square and blue. Any information that is stored in the subconscious mind that is not serving you, you can change it. Any doubt can be turned into a belief. I absolutely promise you that. So if you look at this word, and I looked at this word a number of years ago, we were up at a cottage, and there was a little kids cabin in the woods, and I loved going there because it was just a light bulb, and it was in the woods, and it was by myself, and I'd take my coffee out there in my journal book, and I'd sit and write every morning, and it was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. And I was writing something in my journal book, and I wrote the word, I don't know what I was writing, but I wrote the word impossible, and I stopped and I looked at it, and I thought, wow, look at my reaction, right, to that word. It's impossible. So what does it do? It says, Randy, don't bother, right? Don't try. Don't invest yourself in this. Don't do that. And then I took my pen and I'm looking at it and thought, I was really taken by how powerful the mental response was, just looking at this word impossible. And then I took my pen and I made one small change on the page. And I wrote this, right? Same word, put a hyphen in, said what? Said, I'm possible. And when I tell myself that I'm possible, then how does it make me feel? Makes me feel inspired, makes me feel ready to go, makes me feel that we can do this again, right? So it is so interesting, the power of the mind. And over here was this gentleman, Martin Luther King, right? Just absolutely incredible when you talk about the impossible dream, and what an incredible speech, probably one of the most iconic speeches in the history of the world, standing there at the National Monument and delivered his I Have a Dream speech, that one day all of God's children can join hands and live in harmony. Dr. King said, I have a dream. And that day, his words had so much power, and it reverberated around through that entire square and the city and the nation and the world with so much force that no one could have ever believed it. I remember this day. Yes, I am that old. I remember this day. And no one would have ever said that just 40 years later, a black man would take up residence in a house that was built by slaves, right? So when you take that word impossible and say this, that I'm possible, because yes, you are. And this isn't, empty words and some hyperbole that's, just meant to jack you up and do all those things. I'm totally against that. I am not a motivational speaker. I am a speaker of truth. And I have studied the science of human behavior my entire life. And I know what you're capable of more than you ever will. And so my greatest goal in this, at the end of this session, is to say, you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe where I am now, maybe it has nothing to do with where I can go. So what are you capable of? Well, probably more than rats, would you say? It's very sad, actually. If you ever came back, and were reincarnated as an animal, everybody says, I want to be a rabbit, right? Because they're cute. Maybe a dog, maybe a puppy, maybe a kitten, but probably not a rat. But back in the mid 1950s, there was a professor at Johns Hopkins Medical School, and they decided to do this study on rats. And it was not a very nice study. You'll probably see why, but they wanted to see how long the rats could swim in a beaker of water before they drown. And so they took the rats, and you can see these beakers of water, and they dropped them in the beaker and they hit the timer, right? So how long is the rat going to swim for? And they sat there watching the timers, and the rats, swam and swam and swam, and consistently at about 15 minutes, within, a moment or two of each other, they all started to lose the fight, and they succumbed, and they went below the water. The professor grabbed them, took them out of the beaker, dried them off, let them rest for a couple of moments, and you guessed it, they put them back in. Not very nice. So the question then, and the reason for this study, was to say, based on this, how long would they swim after they just swam for 15 minutes? They've only rested a few moments. How long would they swim the second time? And when I, deliver this information and this science and this study in a live auditorium, people will put their hands up. How long do you think? Somebody says a minute. Somebody says, they'll drown immediately. Somebody else says 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Occasionally I'll hear one person yell out 20 minutes, right? And on, and it keeps going. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Do you know how long they swam the second time? Absolutely outstanding. 60 hours. They swam for 60 hours. And you ask me why. And here's the reason. Because they believed. Because they believed they would be saved. They were saved once. And they believed they would be saved a second time. And because of that, their stamina, life-saving stamina, went from 15 minutes to 60 hours. When we all feel like throwing in the towel, when we all feel like giving in, think again, right? You are so much better equipped than the rats. So you really have the capacity to achieve so much more, to go so much further than the mind is willing to allow you to believe. So I think that we, really have to look at this and talk about what is our potential. And here is probably the greatest example of the pinnacle of potential based on, the comparative and the perspective of where am I and, what has this person been able to achieve? And I've been talking about this story for a long time, and there's been a lot of controversy and, things go on in the media and crazy behavior and all that. I ask you to just set it aside and just look at this purely from being able to have a level of accomplishment. So, of course, unless you're not from this planet, you have heard of Elon Musk, right? So here is someone who came to Canada from South Africa as a young man with his brother, had nothing, started working. I think it was they started working in the banks. They worked for Bank of Nova Scotia, who hasn't done that, right? And then decided that they wanted to go on. Elon wanted to create products that would change mankind. At his age, I was trying to find a quarter to buy a hot dog, but he wanted to change mankind. And his first foray into business was he wanted to be able to move money around on the internet. And every person told him what? Elon, it's impossible. You can't do that, right? The banking regulations, they'll never let you do it. He started PayPal. Then he went on and said, I want to build electric cars. And the world said, no, you can't do that. See, they're golf carts. Nobody's going to buy those. And he kept going and going and going. And he started Tesla. And how many years was he written off? You heard all the stories of how many times he was right on the verge of bankruptcy and Tesla wouldn't make it. I don't know how many hundreds of billions he's worth now. So he, fights as one of the top two or three richest men in the world consistently. Again, came to Canada with nothing and lived in a one-room apartment with his brother, and that's where they were writing code in the creation of PayPal. Then he said, I think we need to become a multi-planetary species. So I want to build rockets. And the world said, sir, you are so out of your league competing against Russia and China and all the big multinationals. You don't have a chance. But he started SpaceX and he built a rocket and it blew up. And he built another one and it blew up. And another one and it blew up. And he was out of money and he scraped together just enough money for the last rocket. He was on the verge of collapse. And he built the fourth rocket and it didn't. And it flew. And he ended up landing a $1.5 billion deal with NASA, now one of the top suppliers for NASA, now building the manned spaceship to go to Mars, the satellite system for internet usage around the world. All of it. It is absolutely incredible. In his entire life, he hasn't been told it's going to be hard. Think about this. He's been told what you're trying to do is not possible. And what he possesses greater than any human being I have ever seen on earth before is this. It's his raging ignorance of doubt. That's it, right? And you can have some of this. It doesn't cost anything. It's all up here and how we condition the mind and how we create the behaviors. The more and more and more, I'm not saying you have to start a rocket business, but the more you create that raging ignorance of doubt and overcome, all those doubts and fears in your mind, the more that absolutely everything will change for you. And so when we're looking at that potential, where I sit right now and what he has achieved, that space in between, that's your potential. And I absolutely mean that. Those things that are out there, those ideas that you have, those inspired thoughts that come to you from time to time, shut out the world, develop that raging ignorance of doubt and go get it. Go get it because it's there for you if you want it. So, the very top, high net worth advisors in this country, can you learn what it is that they're doing? And there's another talk that I give called you may have been at one of the conferences or presentations or watched one of my videos here on CE. Um, the 2% success solution. What are they doing? The other 98% are not. And, in asking the questions, can you learn what it is that they're doing to build that high net worth practice? Is what they're doing a secret? And the answer is, absolutely not. It's not a secret. You could find out what they're doing. So then the next question would be, so once I learn what it is that they're doing, then would it be possible to create a similar plan, right? To execute the same kinds of activities regularly and consistently for them that drive the results for them. Is that possible? What's the answer? The answer is, of course, right? And when you develop the behaviors that they have, again, it all comes back down to behaviors. And here's what the top people in the world do. They develop the right process. They develop the right approaches. They develop the right structure. They develop the right discipline. And you know what happens? Then they have a bad day. And you know what they do? They come right back the next day and they do exactly the same thing. They don't get knocked off. That is probably one of the greatest behavioral elements of the very best. And it's something you can develop. You absolutely can. Because when you learn what they do, when you plan like they do, when you execute like they do, then you'll become them, right? You can break this down in the simplest way. When you do what they do, you will have what they have. It really is, as far as a definition in philosophy, that's what it takes. Is it easy? No. Is it going to take getting out of your comfort zone and changing behaviors and, being able to implement all of the right things consistently and make yourself do things that on certain days you just don't feel like it because the mindset is not there? Of course, right? But not that long. You can create behaviors in 2 to 3 months, and then you will have what they have and become who they are. So the steps really in being able to create a high net worth practice, something that I've worked on for 22 years with clients through training programs, through individual executive coaching, really getting down into the weeds. It's really interesting when you deliver a keynote presentation, as I do quite often. And I love it. I really, love to see that light go off in people's eyes sitting in an audience and things like that. But the one thing about delivering a keynote presentation at conferences is I get to see that sparkle in their eyes, but I don't get to see what actually happens, right? And predominantly, people will go to conferences. You probably have. Maybe you've gone and seen Tony Robbins and, the best of the best, and you had that, jacuzzi experience. You got home and it all dissipated and went away. So one of the great things that I like about what I have learned about training people and about coaching people is to be able to see it happen in real time. So changing behavior, right? Getting the mind right, being able to have your identity first and foremost, be the person that is the advisor for high net worth clients. That's job number one. Mastering your time. And again, what the very top people are doing is something absolutely every one of us can do. You can be a junior advisor and operate the exact same way as, as a Fortune 500 tech CEO that was my private client for a number of years. As the junior advisor, you would look at his calendar and every moment of every day was spoken for. Every moment of every day, including, meeting a friend for lunch, going and seeing his grandkids in a play, taking an afternoon off to go and have time with his friends. But every moment of his day was spoken for. And so managing your time is not something you try and get a handle on when you wake up in the morning. Managing your time is being able to have the structure and the tools necessary to know when you leave the office at the end of the day, your entire day is planned in complete detail by calendar hour. That's what the CEO does, and that's what every one of us can do, right? What is it? What does it take? It takes a calendar. A calendar and what? Knowledge. And then what else? Commitment and discipline to do it again and do it again and do it again and create that behavior. Evaluating your client base and properly segmenting. And I know that most people have gone through a segmentation, exercise before, and they have done this with the current client base that they have. But in growing a high net worth practice, you have to be able to be extremely diligent and disciplined on identifying who are your very, very top clients, who are your next tier clients, and who are your bottom clients, and how are you going to manage them, and what are you going to do with them? You may want to package them and send them off. You may want to bring in a junior advisor. There's a lot of strategies to be able to do that. But in order to grow a high net worth practice, the focus has to stay on your very best clients and over serving those clients beyond what anyone else would do, which leads us to the next point, which is creating an A-plus client service model for your very top clients. And I'm talking about service elements over and above your AGM and quarterly reports and meetings and newsletters and all the rest of it. I'm talking about real in-depth touch points on an emotional level, knowing everything about every one of your top clients, everything about them, about their families and their hobbies and their hopes and their goals and their dreams and their emotions, and being able to have that connection with them, and then using that information through things that we call an emotional touch, scheduled in and planned out in advance, right? Sometimes months in advance, and then just showing up and the client says, how do they remember that about me? Because you're working as a pro, right? You have a continuity list and you have a docket on every one of your clients, learning everything about them personally. And as far as what drives high net worth referrals, what maintains long-term strategy, I would put your emotional connection to understanding the needs of your client above pretty much everything. And it's been proven over the work that I've done with advisors for the past 20 some years. Next is branding, being able to in just a few sentences, being able to identify who you are and what you do, and most importantly, what is different about you. Something that, in business for so long, people have talked about as, well, it's the elevator speech. What is your elevator speech? Unless you're selling elevators, I think it should be revised. And as the person from the outside, the one thing, and I've worked with thousands of advisors and heard all the best elevator speeches in the world. But the problem in it is that it doesn't work predominantly. It really doesn't, because of human psychology. The focus is here, right? On me, right? I'm the advisor and I have these years of experience and I have this service plan and I have these experts and I have, right, this investment strategy and I have all of these things, which is great. And you need those things. But how do you think that feels for the client, right? Because is this relationship not about the client? The fastest answer to any question that I ever get at any conference, in any meeting, is this: what is the most desired and interesting topic of conversation for anyone on the face of the earth? What is it? It's me, right? Why? Because I want to show up, because I want to belong, I want to matter. And so that branding message has to be absolutely pointed to the individual. And I have come up with something that I'm copywriting at the moment. It is incredibly powerful. It is incredibly unique. It is hardly used in this country. And it's something that I give to the clients that I work with on being able to adopt this as their own. So if it's something that is of interest, we can chat down the road. But your message to prospective clients and to the business world has to be about the client, not about ourselves. New business development. This is math. This has to be mathematically worked out. And it's always, kind of surprising to me when I work with clients, and clients who are doing well too, that when you sit down and say, what are your goals for this year? And, most good advisors will have, an annual goal that I want to have, this many policies and this many new clients, and I want to grow this much assets under management and income and commissions and the rest of it to be here. But then the calculation is missing to say how, right? And one of the great things about mathematics is math doesn't lie. So in order to, as a very simplistic example, so if I want 10 new clients, this year. And it takes me 100 phone calls to get a client, right? So out of 100 phone calls, I might get 3 meetings, and out of those 3 meetings, I get one client. Okay. So then let's do the math and say to get 10 clients, then I need 100 times 10. So I need to make 1,000 phone calls. So then I do the math over the 48 weeks that I work during the year and say, how many phone calls do I need to make, and spread it out over the year? There is the model. And that's what happens. But if you don't sit down and break out the math, then that's not going to happen. I mean, it can be social media marketing. It can, of course, be referrals, seminars, new business development approaches of yours, a sales letter campaign that I talk about. You decide on whatever the new business development model is, but then it has to be broken down mathematically. And once you have the math, then you can plug that into your calendar. And again, numbers don't lie. So many times I've talked to clients and said, if I gave you 5 names out of the phone book, just tore a page out of the phone book, and you're going to call these 5 people, how many people believe that you'll get a client out of those 5 names? People say, nah, probably not. I mean, just tear a page of the phone book, probably not. Right? So, and it's so interesting. This is a great analogy of human behavior. Then I say, what if I gave you 1,200 names out of the Brampton phone book or the Toronto phone book or wherever, right? Who here believes that you would get some clients out of 1,200 contacts? Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd get some clients. A few? No, I'd probably get a number, right? And then you look at this and go, okay, so which one's the lie, right? Because you just told me calling 5 clients, it's not going to happen. But calling 1,200 clients, absolutely. And you know what that is, folks? That's equivalent of 5 calls a day, which is 25 calls a week, which is 100 calls a month, which is 1,200 calls a year. So you have to ask yourself, which one is the lie? Is it 5 or is it 1,200? The answer is 5, of course. So the discipline and the behavior matched to the math absolutely is going to be the part of this that is going to drive the success again in a high net worth market. And centers of influence and the platinum referral process, being able to create far more than just a casual relationship with your centers of influence, and taking that one step further. And I've helped several clients do this in creating their own mastermind group with their 4 or 5 or 6 centers of influence, where they meet, have a mastermind group, and it's a symbiotic relationship where they're working to help each other on a monthly basis. They go out and meet for dinner, and the level of trust and back and forth referrals that happen over time, not in the first month, are astounding. And then the platinum referral process, when you ask for a referral, make sure that the groundwork has been laid in advance before you ask for that referral, and to actually know that you earn it. The final part of this is health. If you don't feel well, Jim Rohn said, then you can't do well. And something that I've been more and more focused on with my clients is making sure that they're on top of their health, making sure that they're on top of work-life balance, right? Putting money in the bank account's not that hard, right? But again, if it costs you too much to be able to achieve that, then that really is not winning. And then finally, one last thing, accountability, which is everything. It's pretty funny, actually, over the years. One of the things that I've been told more than anything when clients are hiring me is to say, you know why I'm paying you, right? And I say, why? They say, well, it's because you're going to make me do it. And the answer is right? Accountability. However you create the model, there has to be a method of accountability. You see a lot of people, you work with hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people over a lifetime. But as a financial advisor, as an insurance professional, it's a lonely business. And that's something I've been told thousands of times. You wake up alone and you go to bed alone. And so, when doubts and challenges and thoughts get in our heads, that becomes difficult to manage. So there are 2 coaching options that I offer. One is the Elevate program, that is a 12-month program for financial advisors. And the other is individual private coaching, Epic, Elite Performance Individual Coaching, where we work one-on-one at the speed of the individual and customize the coaching and training to that. So the Elevate program, I created this slogan a long time ago. I hope you write this down and take this with you. It's true that the difference between wanting and having is doing. So many times we get so close to that edge of pulling the trigger and actually doing something to move forward, and we end up, not being able to do that. So the Elevate program is over a 12-month period. There are 12 modules on peak performance behavioral training and senior practice management and high net worth practice management as well, with a system of constant daily contact, follow-up, accountability, all the materials, and access to me at any time for questions and clarification. The program is, I think, been priced very, very well over past many, many years at $19.95. In working with Alan and his great clients through CE, you're going to get a 50% discount. So if you send me an email saying you want to enroll in the Elevate program, put CE in the email, and you will qualify for the 50% discount. So you'll get it for $9.95, all in for the entire year. And if you're looking for a one-on-one model, this is something I really enjoy and see some tremendous results in, because it's, working individually with one person at their own speed, going through everything from behavior to health to work-life balance and productivity and client messaging and client servicing, and just doing so much, getting to a point where you have identified the client service model for every one of your top clients, and there is a reminder scheduled in your calendar for every service element for every top client for the entire year. And then you can relax and go back to doing what you're excellent at, which is, growing your business and taking care of your clients. So if you want to call and set up a 1 hour, no cost or obligation meeting to discuss Epic, Elite Performance Individual Coaching, and Executive Coaching, I'm more than happy to do that and have that conversation with you. So again, to everyone that has joined us here, change, right? It's there. So many times we feel so stuck that we can't change this because this is the way it was. But know what I just said. That's the way it was. It's not the way that it has to be. Where you are now has nothing to do with where you can go. To all of you, to Alan, his entire crew at CE Credits Canada, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it so much, and look forward to answering questions and further conversations with all the people watching. I'm Randy Taylor. Have an amazing day, and be well.
Wow, Randy, this is amazing. You know what's fun about this last slide
What's that?
is that every single advisor that is watching this presentation has a very recent experience with change,
Yeah.
because the way the business looked in 2019, pre-COVID, and the way their business looks today is completely different. And the more that advisors have accepted that change, the better their business got.
Well, and
And
it really is true that, what before were vices are now habits. It's now not an option.
yeah,
If you want to have a really successful career in financial services and insurance, you got to go the high net worth market, right?
absolutely.
Because it's, with the robo advisors and all the rest of it, the compensation levels, it just doesn't work anymore. And again, don't change the what, change the who. There's lots of them out there.
Absolutely. And it was stunning to see the statistics you put up there on the screen about how many high net worth Canadians there really are. I mean,
There's a
you're
lot.
closing in on almost 1 million high net worth Canadians out of a 40 million person population.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
2.5% of the
And those,
population is high
and
net
those
worth.
people they need help.
Yeah,
It's so interesting when, when I talk to people about the psychology and the belief. And I'll ask people in live audiences lots of times and say, who here, feels comfortable if you were able to land $1 million client, right? People,
Yeah.
yeah, most of the hands go up. Then the next question is, how many people are comfortable here if you landed a $500 million client, right? And I had a client who had a $500 million client, and I mean, it's the same process. And this client, needed a lot of expertise, and they had to bring, teams of people in to, really work with him in his charitable funds and, a number of other things. But still, it was one client, $500 million, and the client needed the help. So getting over that, that trepidation and those doubts that say, this won't work for me, not true, right?
Absolutely. And as you said, it really is that voice in that person's head. Out of all the thoughts you have throughout the day, so many of them, I think you said something like 90% of the thoughts are the same thoughts you've had the day
Same ones.
before.
Yeah,
But bring in these new ideas, bring in the change the tone in that voice in your head, and everything around you changes. And that's right. What you're talking about here is giving each and every advisor here the opportunity to change that voice, to change the ability that the advisor has to help those clients, to help more clients.
yeah. One
And
one part of this too, Alan, is that we went through a lot of material, right? There's a lot of things that have to be set up and aligned and everything else
yeah,
in order to to really capture this market. However, uh, you know how much I love Jim Rohn, right? The
yeah,
grandfather of our business. He was Tony Robbins' mentor. But what you need to know is what he said about this. He said, you may not be able to do all there is to do today, but you should find out all there is to do today,
yeah,
right? So once we have the knowledge that it can be done, it's not, Les Brown said, what? If it's been done before, then it's what? It's possible, right? And you are possible. And so just knowing that the process exists says I can go from here to there and I can be that advisor probably within a year
yeah,
to 18 months, right? Being that person who is now exclusively working in a high net worth market. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. And so many people talk about their working environment as the rat race. And I love the rat study that you spoke about. Thankfully, the
Yeah.
rats didn't drown.
No, they didn't. They
But
took them out again, 60 hours. Yeah.
it's just incredible when the in this example, the rat was, paddling away for 15 minutes and says, oh God, I'm getting tired. This is enough. And how many advisors get through their day and say, you know what, I've had enough, and they stop. But yet, when they get that case in the study, the rat study, when the rat got saved, now they go back in. They
Yeah.
know that, oh, okay, this one's out there. If I got to do a little bit more, I do a little bit more. I do a little bit more. And next thing you know, the endurance, because it's backed by belief, the endurance changes.
But
The
but I think also it takes, the knowledge that it's going to happen before it happens. So
Yeah.
I think that, that can be a real challenge for people. And here's, I wrote this definition of commitment a long time ago about, this specific, conversation that, you're calling clients and nobody's reacting and it's not going well and you haven't booked a meeting. And so what do you do? Here's the definition of commitment, mine. The definition of commitment is the continuation of an activity in the apparent absence of results, right? I don't see it. I don't care. Do it again. Do it again.
Yeah,
It's the 5 calls where I say it's not possible, and the 1,200 calls that every person says absolutely I would get clients,
yeah,
right? So it's just here.
yeah,
Wayne Gretzky became Wayne Gretzky because he believed he was. He was not the greatest physical specimen as a hockey player, but going in on goal, he believed more than anybody what the puck was going in,
yeah,
right? So, yeah,
yeah.
it's like that.
Absolutely incredible. You know what, Randy? I hope that every advisor watching today reaches out to you because the world is changing, the business has changed, The way that advisors deal with clients is changing. And so why not each advisor here become more successful by making a change in their career as well, in helping to build a high net worth
Sure.
practice. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, if anyone has any, any questions, comments, I obviously love what I do. So drop me a
Yeah.
line. We'll have a conversation and and see what happens. But again, Alan, I appreciate it. The number one CE provider in Canada. Some big news I know coming up next year for your company, and um, been friends a long, long time, and I've just been an admirer of what you have built all these years. And keep going, my friend. You got this.
Well, the difference between wanting and having is
I mean,
doing, so I'm
yeah,
doing.
that's and your wife told you that.
And my wife told me
That's
that.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it works well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All
Randy,
right, my
thank you
friend. Thank you
so
so
much for
much.
this today. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye bye.